Hi, I'm Steve Green. Welcome back again. I've had several requests to do with record counts following on from a previous video. Quite a few people are interested to know how to do a many-to-many count. I think Mike mentioned an example of a teacher and student, so I'll sort of base it around that. So what I've done, I've created a custom teacher entity. So we can see here, if I open it, it's quite simple. It's just got the name of the teacher, this is Professor Smith, and a number of students. And related to that are the students are stored on the contacts entity, and this is a many-to-many. If I show you the relationship in the customizations area, so if I go to my settings solutions, open my demo solution, expand entities, expand teacher, and I choose the native many-to-many, you can see I've created this, obviously because my prefix is FSO, so it's the new relationship is obviously preceded with my prefix, and then the entity itself is FSO teacher related to the contact entity. And I've made that available in both the details area using the plural name. So the plan is to create a plugin that when you associate or disassociate any contacts to the teacher record, it will calculate the new value. So if I obviously take this Professor Smith, look at the contacts, you can see there are 226. I've just chosen everyone with the surname of Smith or Smith in their name somewhere. Accordingly, I could create another professor, but what we'll do, I'll show you the plugin I've been working on. So going across to Visual Studio, this is the CRM demo solution you can see on the left that we've been working with throughout some of the previous videos. I've done a little bit of work on this already to save you having to watch the process. So that's now the solution open. What I've done is I've created a new plugin by right-clicking, add new item, choose the class library, and obviously give it a suitable name. My plugin is simply called Associate. The reason for that is that the associate message differs from a lot of the other message types in that it doesn't have a target entity. It will trigger for any association, and also the developer toolkit doesn't actually support it. What I mean by that is if I expand my CRM Explorer and expand my organization and plugin assemblies, we can see my plugins project and assembly that's deployed to the platform. And if I expand again and just pick any plugin just to show the process and right click and add step, you're forced with the developer toolkit to pick a primary entity, but the message for associate doesn't take a primary entity. So the way we can register it is we have to just pick any entity. So I mean, if I'll do it on the actual associate plugin itself, I need to actually register a disassociate message. So if I just pick any entity and any message, so let's take a few seconds to retrieve the available message types. It doesn't matter what I pick here again, so I can pick assign. It'll be post operation of the disassociate message, so after the disassociation has occurred, and we'll have it occur synchronously. So if I just OK that, it will update it'll add the step, but obviously it's saying post account assign, which is not what we're looking for. So if I expand my package and open the register file and scroll down to my plugin for associate, we can see this additional post account assign, and what we need to do is just give that as just a name of the step, so we can just call it post I hope I'm spelling that right. Disassociate, maybe two S. No, it's a single S. So then again, the name here, this post operation of a countersign, we can say post operation of disassociate. Now this is the important bit, obviously the message name, much like you can see above for the associate, we need to replace the assign that we were forced to pick because we just picked a message from the available, and it's important to blank off the primary entity name. If you use the plugin registration tool, this message type is available, but it's just a bit of a limitation of the developer toolkit. So other than that, we've got disassociate, no entity, and we've renamed to something more suitable. I can now deploy. Let me just make sure I've copied this to the clipboard in case it goes wrong, because it tends to delete your XML when it goes wrong. So I'm going to deploy. Okay, that's finished deploying. Again, typical, I've got the register file open, so prompts to reload. So now the plugin I'd started to develop has got a post associate and a post disassociate message registered. But what this means is this plugin will trigger system-wide when any associate or disassociate message is triggered. If I show you in the solution under the SDK message processing steps, we can see the two messages, and you can see that CRM flags them as all objects. You've got no choice on that, so obviously be very careful when you register plugins at these steps, the sort of workload that they're putting on the server. I mean, you don't want to be doing thousands of lines of code processing because it will slow down every time someone associates records together. So if I now run through what I've done, I've instantiated the context, the tracing service. It differs slightly from the other plugins in that we won't have an entity as a target type. It will be because it's a relationship for an associate. I've just instantiated an entity reference. I've then checked on the input parameters for whether it contains relationships. So this will be which relationship is being triggered for so you'll have a target entity, so this will be the teacher record, and it'll be relating a collection of contacts, and obviously the relationship will be the many-to-many relationship that we saw. If I expand teacher again, that will be the relationship, the FSO underscore FSO teacher underscore contact. So I've also done a check because it will still contain a target parameter, but in this case it will be an entity reference, which will be a reference to the teacher record. So I hope that's making some sense. So we'll be associating a bunch of one or more contacts to the teacher record, or disassociating, which will trigger this plugin, and obviously it will contain these various input parameters. Then if those are all true, I extract the entity reference for the target to this entity ref variable. I also check if the message type is not associate, and I'll obviously have to add it's not equal to disassociate. I can delete this commented outline for the account from previous plugin. So if it's not equal to either of those two message name. If it's not equal to either of those two message types, the plugin will end. And just remove that space. So then I instantiate the service factory, extract the organization service from that, use the create organization service method. It will be in the context of the calling user. I've then, for this example, obviously created an early bound type. I've had to obviously regenerate this early bound class with the CRM service util. So if you're not sure how to do that, please see one of my other videos. I've done it in a well, there's a dedicated video for generating an early bound entity class, and I've also, in I think the simple plugin video, I do show you how to do that. So I've declared an early bound type but defined it as null. I'm then checking if the entity reference that as part of this associate or disassociate, whether it's equal to the teacher logical name. So if the type of entity reference being passed in is not FSO teacher, I don't want it to do anything. So although it'll trigger on it if I associate a contact to an account, this plugin would trigger, but I don't obviously want it to. It won't then process the code within this section. So also then I do a check. Well, sorry, I check if the relationship schema name is this FSO underscore teacher underscore contact. Obviously I have to cast that input parameter, that relationship input parameter, to a relationship type so I can access this schema name property. And if it does equal that property, this is where I want to do the many-to-many count. So I'm going to use the link provider to do this. So I've instantiated my organization service context that I generated as part of my early bound class, which is just that CRM demo context. You can instantiate just the standard organization service context, and I think the methods, I think, a create query at the end, but I'll show you now. So now we want to do the many-to-many query, and I think this sort of confuses quite a few people. They think it's more complicated than it is, because what you've got with a many-to-many, you've got your entity A, which we'll call contacts, you've got entity B, which is the teacher entity, and when it's a native many-to-many, the system creates an entity to link them together, and it's that entity that we wish to query. So if I show you on our server, if I expand the CRM demo organization, expand tables, and scroll down, we can see that CRM has generated, when we created the many-to-many relationship in the back end, in the database, it created this matching table. And if I open that and look at the content, it's got its own unique GUID like any entity in CRM, and then it simply contains entity A's or entity B, whichever way around you look at it, ID field and the related entity. So a particular teacher record will exist many times with many different students, which are the contacts. So if we query this entity, that will give us the information for the count. So if I say var related and then do my link query, so from, pick any word, letter, it doesn't really matter, in the organization service context, and then the data set, there'll be a data set for that teacher contact set, and then what I need to do is set a criteria so that the column for the teacher ID, so as we saw in the database, there's a column for teacher ID, there's a column for contact ID, where that teacher ID equals, so we've done a retrieve of the record. So when this associate happened or disassociate, pass in an entity reference for the record that's having records attached to it. So there'll be a entity reference for this we've cast this teacher here, where we can see I've done a retrieve of it, but at the very end, so where I've surrounded this obviously in brackets, and then I've done this to entity reference, so it casts it to a early bound type in this teacher record. So in my query, all I need to do is, so the teacher ID equals the ID of the record that's being associated to or disassociated from, and then I can just select all those records, and because there's so few columns on that entity anyway, we don't need to be specific. And then I can update that teacher record. So my field you saw earlier, the number of students, equals that iQueryable collection. So it's a collection of those, of that middle entity, that many-to-many entity. So if I do the toList method and then do a count of that list, and then all I need to do is a service.update to update the teacher record. So I hope that makes some sense. So we've got a plugin registered on an associate, so anytime any contacts are registered against the teacher or disassociated, trigger this plugin. It's a slightly different message content in that it's got a target that's of type entity reference. It will contain a relationship, and the other property will be the related entities. So the entities to be related to, so all the contacts that wish to be related to this entity reference target, i.e. our teacher, it will also contain that. So do some basic checks, obviously extract the target entity reference into a variable, set up the normal service, organization service, generate an early bound type, retrieve the teacher record that's referenced in the message, do a check that for this particular associate or disassociate, it's the one we're looking to do the calculation for. Obviously, this same plugin could be used to work for many different associations, but just be careful about the amount of code and processing you do. And then we instantiate the organization service context, query the middle entity between for the many-to-many, do a list of the results and do a count of that list, pass it into number of students, and update. So let me just deploy that. That's finished deploying. So if I go to CRM now and I bring up one of my teacher records, or my teacher record, obviously it won't do a calculation until we associate or disassociate. So we've got 226 records associated. If I just pick a couple of extra ones, click OK, take a second for the plugin to load and be cached. So now I've got 228. If I go to the front screen, obviously because it's not part of the update message or anything like that, it won't be sort of passed in, and it'll have updated this behind the scenes basically. So if I refresh, I may have to close and reopen. So there you can see it's got the 228 students as per the total on the many-to-many. So if I pick a bunch of them, that's not delete, that's remove, so I'm not deleting them from the system. So I'm disassociating 5. So again, that should refresh the contacts list. Possibly the refresh won't work. No, so let's just reopen the record. So you can see the 223. So I'm hoping that makes sense. I mean, I spent more time talking about the associate and disassociate message than I did really about the many-to-many, but once you get your head around the fact that there's a middle entity that you can query, so if you were looking for the number of teachers a contact had, instead of using the FSO teacher ID, you'd use the contact ID, and obviously you'd pass it in a particular contact you were interested in, and then you'd get a count of teachers in reverse. So well, I'll say it's as simple as that. It's not simple unless you know it. But I hope that's helped a few people. I hope that's what people were looking for. Please feel free to fire any comments below and any other requests, and I'll hopefully, when I got the time, do some videos. Thanks for watching. Bye.